Faith, Love, and Therapy, a podcast to encourage and inspire. I'm your host, Jamie Johnson, a therapist that's been working in the field of mental health for the last 10 plus years. I believe this is a podcast that is God-led and God-inspired. Thank you for joining me as we peel back the layers of mental health from a faith perspective. So glad that y'all are here for another episode. Please connect with me on social media. You can connect on Facebook or Instagram. Facebook, Faith, Love, and Therapy Podcast on Facebook, and Faith, Love, and Therapy Podcast on Instagram. Also, if you'd like to email me, if you have questions, you'd like to be a part of the show, or if you just have some topics you want me to cover, you can email me at faithlovetherapy@gmail.com. That has no and. So faithlovetherapy@gmail.com. Look forward to connecting with you on social media and reading your email. All right, so we are in another episode. Episode 30, last episode, we started talking about family of origin and kind of, some things we need to take time to really sit with, process, why it's important, and, specifically the barrier of spiritual maturity. We have difficulty developing spiritually if we are not dealing with the emotional component of things. And so this episode, I wanted to kind of unpack one of the I guess issues, I'll use the term issues, that I've seen come up when there are some things that occur in the family of origin. And this particular topic, well, I'll say unresolved issues in the past. This particular topic is perfectionism. So it's, of course, under the anxiety, under the umbrella of anxiety. And I wanted to really unpack that today because I see it a lot. I actually see it more often in women. It is not to say that men do not experience it, because they absolutely do. I think some of our symptoms definitely manifest a little bit differently, but women are more, maybe they're more honest with kind of being, with sharing those issues with perfectionism. But I have seen it more frequently in women. So perfectionism is the belief that everything must be perfect at all times. And a perfectionist sets typically impossible goals and feels very crushed when they're not achieved. And so alternatively, someone who strives to do their best sets challenging goals that are more achievable. So you want to be able to you still want to be able to strive for excellence. I know often, in church, we talk about the spirit of excellence. That's something that we should absolutely strive for, is to do the things that we're called to do, our work, our family, all of those things with the spirit of excellence. Perfectionism is a different story, and it causes much more heartache and much more pain. So I just want to kind of give you a glimpse of perfectionism versus like striving for excellence. So perfectionism believes that everything must be perfect at all times. Striving for excellence understands that some situations call for perfection. Like if I'm performing surgery, like we don't have a lot of room for error. But other situations don't. So like choosing an outfit, I don't have to have the perfect outfit, So that's striving for excellence versus perfectionism. Another example, perfectionism would be like spends excessive time on like trivial problems, whereas striving for excellence will focus time on the most important problems. I hope you're starting to see the pattern. Perfectionism is motivated by the fear of failure, criticism, or rejection. We talk about those things often. Whereas the spirit of excellence or striving for excellence is motivated by the potential for success and happiness. See the difference. One is motivated by fear of failure, criticism, or rejection, while the other is motivated by the potential for success and happiness. Perfectionism sees self only in extremes, so either perfect or failure. There's no in between. There's no gray area. I'll hear clients say that all the time. There's no real gray area. There is, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable in the gray area. I remember having a conversation with a friend, and she was like, there's a lot of blessing in the gray area. There's a lot of healing in the gray area. We had she almost had a whole sermon about the gray area, but I'll leave that there. But so it's perfectionism looks at the extremes, whereas striving for excellence sees self as a balanced perspective. So with both strengths and weaknesses, being able to see your strengths and your weaknesses is incredibly important. So, some of the challenges of perfectionism, one, there's a difficulty making decisions. So you're always second guessing yourself, or regretting decisions. You have difficulty just like pulling the trigger, so to speak. There's also difficulty with commitment, such as in like relationships or choosing a career. There is avoidant, like there's behavior where you're avoidant of risks and new experiences out of the fear of failure. So you're trying not to, you're like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't know how to do that. And I've counseled several college students in that particular age range, college women. I've heard that a lot. Like, well, if I'm not good at that, so I don't do it, which is very interesting to me. And I've wrestled with that in my past, so that's why I kind of connect with that. But and then also another challenge from perfectionism is self-esteem is so dependent on meeting impossible standards. So you can never really feel good about yourself because there is such an issue with seeing yourself as valuable when you don't achieve those impossible standards. So perfectionism contributes to problems like procrastination, stress, anxiety, and depression. It is totally possible to be perfectionistic in one area of your life, but not others. And I think people have to really connect with that. Sometimes they think, well, I'm not a perfectionist because, I don't care like if my outfit is perfect or something like that. But yes, you can be a perfectionist in a particular area and not in other areas. Perfectionism is a personality trait which is caused by both environmental and biological factors, so upbringing and genetics. So as I spoke about in the last episode, family of origin. And that's why we're unpacking some of these issues that arise from unresolved situations or experiences in your family of origin or in your childhood or in your development. Excuse me. So despite being a personality trait, perfectionism can be changed, though. So I want you to remember that. Therapy is effective at reducing perfectionism. Therapy can be used to explore like a person's strengths and help them develop more balanced thinking and improve self-esteem. So some of the things I want to go over are like how to overcome perfectionism, because I think it's important not to just talk about it, but then some of the steps that need to be taken in order to start to resolve some of these issues. So one of the things is becoming more aware of like your tendencies. So take time to really pause and pay attention to your thought patterns about perfectionism. May even try writing things down to understand them better. And then once you're aware of how you allow perfectionism to take hold of your life, then you'll be able to alter or shift the self-talk around that particular issue. So first, you want to become aware of your tendencies. Start writing some things down. Write your thought patterns down. We all have them. Second way to start helping with perfectionism is to focus on the positives. So wanting everything to be perfect means that we tend to fixate on the negative parts of ourselves or our work. However, it's so important to make a really conscious effort to recognize the good. So for everything you're not quite satisfied with, challenge yourself to identify maybe 3 things that you do appreciate. So for every challenge that you identify, try to identify 3 things that you do appreciate about yourself. Next, I'd say allow yourself to make mistakes. This is a big one for perfectionists because that is something that, perfectionists, we try to avoid at all costs. Like, I'm not going to make this decision because if I make a mistake, then, the domino effect. We start thinking of like all the things that will happen. And so we don't make a decision. But really, really starting to allow yourself to make mistakes. When we allow ourselves to make mistakes, we can really see that it's not the end of the world. And that's what really has to set in is that, it's not the end of the world. I use it kind of in humor in therapy. A client will tell me something and I'm like, but did you die though? Did they die? And they kind of look at me like, well, no. But because I want people to see the gravity of the situation, some things that we're holding on to are not major. They're minor problems. They are minor inconveniences that feel so big. And so I kind of have to take it to the extreme and say, well, nobody died, nobody died. So let's really take into consideration how big this is. So, and really learning that mistakes are opportunities for us to learn, grow, and do better. One way to practice this is like starting a new hobby that you are not, like you've never done before, and really stepping out there and trying something that is not necessarily in your wheelhouse or your skill, something that you know you'd be good at because you already have these particular skills. Choose something else. Choose something that is that will allow you to learn as you go, because that's how you grow. And we want to be able to, if we mess up, we want to be able to be okay with the fact that, okay, I didn't hit the mark, but I did this, I accomplished that. And so you might find that that the mistakes are kind of necessary in learning about yourself. So allow yourself to make mistakes. Allow yourself to make the mistakes, y'all. The next one I'd say is really set reasonable goals. And you may need support on this one, because if you are used to setting unreasonable goals, you may think your goals are reasonable, and you need to kind of fact check that with somebody who is a little bit more who's not perfectionistic. So perfectionists tend to set goals that are really, really unrealistic, and because they have impossible standards. And so one way to let go of perfectionism is to start setting goals that are achievable. There is, if you look up on the internet, SMART goals are really, really, it's all over the internet. Using a SMART goal format is a good way to start setting achievable goals. And so it also helps you to feel less stressed and more confident when you're able to achieve a goal. It's kind of like, that reinforcement. You reinforce good behavior. Like you get excited when you achieve a particular goal. So if you're always setting goals that are not achievable, you're going to stop wanting to move in that direction, wanting to set goals. You're going to stop feeling good about yourself as well. It's going to cause you to become even more critical of yourself. And that's the next thing. Really learn to receive criticism. People who are perfectionists tend to have low self-esteem. And because of that, taking criticism is always very personal. And I can identify with this. My self-esteem is growing as I'm aging. But very early on, very low self-esteem, due to, experiences with bullying, a lot of bullying. So because of that, I struggled with criticism. And I remember my first job out of college, we had regular supervision, in the mental health field. We have supervisions, we staff clients, that sort of thing. And we were, I was kind of avoiding supervision. I would always, kind of show up late or hope that he forgot. And, a supervisor at the time never forgot supervision. Like he's very on point. So I'd sometimes be late, or then when I would, he would start giving me feedback, and it honestly is genuine feedback. And I think one time it was about how to meet my hours, because it was a difficult case. And I really started tearing up, and he was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm good." But I'm falling apart inside. And that's because, I was still in that place of really, really sensitive to criticism. So being able to work through that and recognize that there's a level of healthy criticism. I'm not telling you to take abuse, because that's not necessary. But there's a level of healthy criticism that's helpful and normal, and learning to accept that is important. Next, I would say lower the pressure that you put on yourself. Typically, it is self-imposed. Be kind to yourself, practice self-acceptance, have realistic standards for yourself. We're not talking about settling, because perfectionism is an extreme. It's not, you're not lowering the bar. You're actually putting the bar at an achievable level. So there's no such thing as perfect, but you want to be able to be proud of what you accomplish. So lower that pressure and just be proud of the steps that you make. And being able to accept your achievement at a realistic level. Then I would say focus on meaning over perfection, finding the meaning in what you're doing versus trying to be perfect in everything that you do. Does it bring joy? Is this part of my purpose? Do I feel that it's purposeful what I'm doing? Is it fulfilling? All the good things, all the things that you want the particular goal or activity to accomplish. You want it to bring some fulfillment. And so focus on the meaning in the particular task or achievement or goal, and not perfectionism. Then I'd say try not to procrastinate. Like, I'm literally stepping on my own toes on this one because I am in procrastination recovery. Like, I'm really, really trying to work through this. But, perfectionists, we tend to be notorious procrastinators. And so we kind of give ourselves, I guess, an excuse to slack off a little bit. And so it can ensure that we do the work perfectly. So like we will take time off, or we will procrastinate because we don't feel, because of the anxiety that starts. But we think it's going to give us an edge up, and we're going to be able to take time and like really do it perfectly. But typically it's unhelpful, and we start being very stressed out in the long run. So it backfires. So really start working on procrastination and continuing to like slowly work on a project versus putting it off until the last minute and trying to get it done. Cut out negative influences. That could be individuals in your life. A lot of times it's social media. I know even with doing this podcast, like when you see other podcasters, or when you see people that are content creators and kind of what seems like they are pumping things out and it just looks so great. And, sometimes that can impact, a perfectionist mindset. It can impact, it can make me want to procrastinate. It makes me want to stop. So it makes me want to just like not do it. I'm like, okay, I'm not measuring up, so I'm not going to do it at all. But it really, that kind of hustle culture, that kind of perfectionist, like filtered life can be, very destructive. It's very destructive. And so if we need to kind of set limits on like channels we watch, or like delete things altogether, sometimes that's important in order to cut out negative influence. And then I think the last thing I would say, of course, as a therapist, is to go to therapy, because therapy can help. It helps deal with the anxiety around perfectionism. And, I don't know that I often talk about that I do struggle with anxiety at times. I have had more on the social side of things, but I recognize and I can relate to these particular topics, or this particular topic, because it has made me an incredible procrastinator. And I do get stuck in that cycle of fear of like failure and rejection and criticism. So I really have had to, over the years, really work through that. And I'm still working through that. So that's why therapy helps you process these things and move through to have a better understanding of like, one, the reason behind the pressure to be perfect, and to really unpack that, and to address the things that, we are struggling with and that keep us in that cycle that I kind of talked about in the last episode. We don't want to stay in cycles that impact our destiny. So I hope this was helpful to you all. I remember saying in the last episode that I'm healing and I'm taking some folks with me. And so I'm going to continue saying that because I want you all to really take in what's coming through this episode. So I thank you for joining me on another episode of Faith, Love, and Therapy, because I'm healing and I'm taking folks with me. I'll see y'all next time.